And speaking of mothers, my own mother always told me that if you don't have anything nice to say about anybody, don't say anything at all. So after what this next person wanted to do to me a couple of weeks, well, please welcome the big red monster, Kane.
Paul Bearer was born William Moody in Mobile, Alabama. Even when he lived elsewhere, Mobile would always be Bill's home. He got his first taste of professional wrestling when his parents took him to the television tapings at a local TV studio. By the time he was a teenager, Moody was hooked and was a fixture at events on the Gulf Coast. Incidentally, some of Bill's friends also ended up in the wrestling industry. Robert Gibson of the famed Rock and Roll Express. Michael P.S. Hayes of the legendary Fabulous Freebirds. Moody got his first job in the wrestling business while he was still in high school as the ringside photographer for Gulf Coast Wrestling. Upon graduation from high school, he joined the United States Air Force, but was lucky enough to be stationed in Biloxi, Mississippi, which allowed him to continue attending events on the Gulf Coast. After being discharged from the Air Force, Moody went to work as a licensed apprentice funeral director. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, and one of the great ironies of our business, Paul Bearer was a mortician in real life. In 1974, Moody made his in-ring debut as Mr. X. Now you can imagine with a name like Mr. X, his career as a wrestler was short-lived and uneventful. So he channeled his energy into managing and adopted the persona of Percival Pringle III. The flamboyant, bleach blonde ringside manager. Percy was soon a mainstay in Florida Championship Wrestling, as well as the Von Erichs World Class Championship Wrestling out of Texas. But then in 1990, everything changed. Moody went to WWE and joined The Undertaker as his manager. And Paul Bearer was born. And as great and awesome as The Undertaker was in his own right, Paul Bearer, with his ghastly white face and his trademark shrill voice, completed the package, making The Undertaker the most unique and undoubtedly greatest character in WWE history. For years, The Undertaker would dominate WWE with Paul Bearer, the keeper of the sacred urn, at his side. But as usually happens in our business, the closest relationships end up spawning the most fearsome rivalries, and this was no exception, as Paul Bearer dedicated himself to destroying The Undertaker, utilizing the services of superstars like Vader and Mankind. And then in mid-1997, Paul Bearer informed the dead man that he knew a deep, dark secret from The Undertaker's past. That secret, of course, was me. Kane, The Undertaker's long-forgotten brother. Now, call me biased, but I believe that the Undertaker-Kane saga was the best piece of epic storytelling WWE has ever done. But it wouldn't have been possible without Paul Bearer. Paul Bearer was the bridge that connected Undertaker and Kane. I spent a number of years on the road with Paul Bearer. Not only was that some of the most fun of my career, but it's also some of the most easiest years of my career because Paul would make all the travel arrangements. Pretty much all I had to do was show up. He also converted me into a somewhat reluctant connoisseur of country music, which along with Alabama football and Mobile Mystics hockey was one of the great passions of his life. The only trouble that Paul and I ever had was when it was revealed that Paul Bearer was Kane's father. From that point on, he never failed to hesitate to remind me of who my daddy was. And then there was the time that Paul said that he was ill and asked if I minded driving us to the arena that evening. Now, this was not too long after I had debuted, and in order to conceal my identity from you, the public, I always wore a ski mask when I arrived at the building. So here we are. I believe we're pulling down the ramp in San Diego, California. Show sold out. WWE Universe has already packed the parking lot. Paul Bearer is sitting in the passenger seat. I am trying to look as inconspicuous as possible while being an enormous man wearing a ski mask and driving a Cadillac. When suddenly the ailing Paul Bearer perks to life, pops up, rolls down the window and starts screaming in vintage Paul Bearer fashion, "It's a miracle! Kane can drive! Kane can drive!" I'll never forgive him for that.